Hi there, Ram owners. Today on your 2017 Ram 1500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Firestone's Air Command 1 air compressor system. And this is what our compressor system looks like when it's installed. We've got our control unit mounted here inside the dash, and you have your gauge here so you can see the pressure in real time on what is in your bags. And you've got your switch here that allows you to either increase or decrease the pressure. This is a single pass system, so it airs up both of our bags at the same time, and we've got it hooked into the rear. If you had enough T-fittings and you had front bags, you could hook this into your front bags as well. Just keep in mind that if you were using this, it would air up all the bags equally with the same amount of pressure, and you may not want that. You may want to have independent control of your front and rear. So we can see here, we'll just push it up. The compressor kicks on, and it routes the air from the compressor to our gauge assembly, and then from our gauge assembly back to our bags. If we press down on our button, the line that's going from the bags to our gauge assembly here will exhaust the air just right out here into the cab. So you can see you can easily raise and lower up the airbags as necessary without even having to get out of your truck. So that's kind of nice. If you're going to pick something up, maybe somebody's got a forklift and they drop off a load in the back, and you can almost see in the hood of your car that you're now tipped up. You can, right here, you can start just airing it up until it levels you back out and you're looking like you were before you had any load in there. And on our gauge here, it has a incandescent bulb behind it that will illuminate, and you can hook this into your running light circuit so that way whenever your lights come on, this will also illuminate so you can see your gauge at night. I'm going to switch my lights just to parking lights, and we can see there that it turned on the light. And then we're going to go ahead and just turn them back off, and the light goes off. So that way you get illumination when you need it with the bulb that's included there. So now we've talked about our gauge cluster and kind of shown it working here, we can go ahead and head underneath and we'll take a look at the compressor that comes in our kit. So now we're underneath, and this is our compressor here. We've got it just mounted directly onto the frame. The compressor system that comes with does come with different hardware than we used. So you might want to consider getting some self-tapping screws, just because there's not a whole lot of places on some of these trucks to mount this. It kind of depends on the options you've got. A lot of these trucks, you've got an opening where your battery tray is. If you have a single battery and the other one's open, that's a great place to mount your compressor. But on ours here, it's a dual battery system, so we had to kind of figure out some better places. And this compressor has a max output of 150 psi, which is going to be more than enough for most of your bags out there, and it's going to be enough for the heavier duty bags that's offered by some of the manufacturers. Firestone's got their red label bags, which go up to 150 psi, so this one's going to be able to match those bags equally with the amount of pressure that they can utilize. Many of the other bags only top out at 100 psi, so just keep that in mind. If you do have one of the standard bags that only go up to 100, that this compressor could go higher than what they are rated for, so make sure that you stop your bags at 100. Now in most cases you're not going to need 100 psi to equal to your ride height back to where it was. I found in most cases 40 to 50 pounds usually will get your truck back up when it's loaded up to what it is rated for its maximum weight. And also included with your kit, you're going to get a couple of T-fittings. The T-fittings are nice because you can utilize that to maintain your manual inflation. So it comes with two in the kit. One of the T-fittings is going to be required for the single pass system to split to both your driver and passenger side bags. But the fact that they include a second one there is really cool because we're able to utilize the manual inflation that we've got at the back. So if there's any event where there's something going on with the compressor, who knows what happens, maybe you ran over something and it broke a wire to the compressor, so the compressor's not turning on. You need to still utilize your bags that day. You don't know where the brake is. You haven't figured it out yet. You can come back there and still use that manual inflation valve to get things done. Your kit also comes with a harness that comes with all the wires you need to get it installed. You've got your outputs for your compressor, the lead up to the battery, and as well as the controls that go up to the gauge assembly inside. So you really kind of get pretty much everything you need here. There are a few things. I would definitely recommend some hardware for your compressor. You may need that. You may need some hardware to mount your cluster on the dash, depending on where you want to mount it. And you may need some additional butt connectors and ring terminals just because the sizes on your vehicle may not match with the size that comes in the kit. They're a little small in the kit so they may not work with what you got here. So just maybe get yourself some of those things, and you should be good to go with this kit. And this is a nice heavy-duty compressor. You got that 150 PSI maximum output. But for my top pick for compressor, I actually prefer Airlift's wireless One Easy compressors. Those ones are significantly easier to install than this system. It minimizes the hose routing that you've got throughout your vehicle and the wire routing that you've got throughout the vehicle, which minimizes issues that can occur in the future, especially with the hoses. I'm not a big fan of having our hose run in the vehicle and then back out the vehicle to go out. That's a lot of airline that's run that has potential for leaks in the future. And then you have to find a location to mount your gauge cluster on the inside with this one here, whereas the Airlift one is a wireless unit. So you get a remote that you can operate it with, and you can just put that in your center console. It also has Bluetooth connectivity, so you can leave the remote in your vehicle and you don't even ever have to get it out, because you can download the app on your phone and operate the Airlift compressor through that. So you've got kind of a little bit more options there. The Airlifts are available in single or dual path, so just like you can get the Firestone ones here in single or dual, but the wireless connectivity of the other one just makes the usability of it way better, and the installation, again, is so much simpler because you don't have to mount that gauge cluster inside. And I really like that for longevity of the system. I really feel like this one here, we've done the best you can, routing your lines to make sure they're not going to wear through and everything. But you just don't know what's going to be out there, things that fly up on the road that could potentially damage them and, over time. Where that wireless one, you can mount it much closer to your bags at the back, really hide that lines and stuff up high, so we don't have to run them down here and go inside the vehicle. There's a lot less turns and things like that where it can rub on sharper edges. So I just really feel like that's a much better system than this one. You can check that out here at eTrailer and give it a go. But if you're set on a Firestone one, because you got Firestone bags, this one does work. Just expect to spend a little bit more time installing it. So we're going to cover installing this one now. If you want to follow along with us, we'll show you how we got it installed on our Ram here. And yeah, we'll take you through on how to get it all hooked up to your bags and get it wired up to operate. We'll begin our installation by mounting up our major components. And the first one here is going to be our compressor. Now you can choose wherever you want to put this. We chose to put ours on the side of the frame here, just below the driver's side door. We're just in front of the body mount that's located here. You can kind of see this is where the front suspension kind of starts here, leading into the axle up there. So get an idea of where we're at. And we just used self-tapping screws and ran them in. Now these did not come included with the kit. We did purchase these separately. Included with your kit you get bolts like this. So you can drill holes through something and then nut and bolt it on. But these aren't going to be long enough to go through our frame, so we just opted to swap those out with self-tapping screws. You should be able to get those at your local hardware store. And we just pushed them right in and then just ran them right into the sheet metal. We used an 8mm socket to run those down. After we ran those in to get this mounted up, I took the bottom one here and I removed the screw. And after we got the compressor mounted up here with those screws, we did remove the bottom one down here. And then the black wire that's on your compressor here, it has a ring terminal pre-installed on it. We just took the bolt, slid it through the ring terminal, and then just reinstalled that bolt there. That's going to give us our ground for our compressor system there. All right, now that we've got our compressor mounted up here, we can go ahead and screw our fitting in here. And we can go ahead and tighten that down. We're going to use a 15mm wrench here and a 13mm here to tighten it down. You could also use a 9/16 and a 1/2 inch. Both of those will work out just fine for these. And then on the other side of our compressor here, we've got another fitting that we'll need to install. This one's got a small kind of serrated end on it there. So we're just going to thread that in there. And then we'll use our 15mm to tighten it down. Again, you can also use a 9/16 on here would work fine. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start getting some of our wiring hooked up and routed. We've got our relay that we mounted right here. We just used a self-tapping screw and ran it into the frame right through the tab at the top of the relay. Where we're located here, we're pretty much just in front of the compressor. We're maybe about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet from the compressor forward. And we just decided to mount it there because it's a little bit closer to our battery. The red wire that's coming off here needs to route up to your engine compartment towards the battery. The white wire here needs to route inside, so that way we can plug it into the control unit that goes inside. And then our orange wire here is going to run back towards our compressor. We just zip tied it to the parking brake cable that was located here. And we're going to take the red wire here that's coming off of our compressor, and we're going to plug that into the orange wire. We're just plugging these two pieces together, and we've got it zip tied there to keep these wires secured. Our white wire here, we were able to feed this inside by just pushing it through the grommet here where our parking brake cable passes through. That goes right through there. In order to do that, we poked just a pick right through it to make a hole. Then I took a drill bit and I kind of wallowed it out a little bit, and then I was able to pass my wires through. I did have to pull a trim panel loose on the inside and lift the carpet up just a little bit to see this, so we'll be showing you that. But it's pretty easy to get to. It's just this one little trim piece, and then the carpet flips up. We also took some of the red hose that comes in our kit, and we passed it through that same hole. And you can actually use the air line that comes in your kit here as a pull wire. So what we did is we passed this through first because it's a little bit more rigid, so it was kind of easier to pass through the hole. And then we taped the wire through it and then pulled the airline tubing here to pull the wire through along with the tubing. And our red wire here, we just kind of go behind this body mount. We follow the frame forward, and then you actually can just peel back this liner a little bit right here. We poked the wire up there, and then from the engine compartment, we were able to reach down and grab that wire to pull it up. All right, guys, so now we're on the inside here. We're on the driver's side. We got the door open. This is that trim piece I was telling you about that we got to pull up to access that grommet for the parking brake cable. You just pull up on it and then pull rearward to pop the clips out there. And you can set that aside. Here on the bottom, you can see those are the clips we removed pulling it up, and these are the two from pulling it back. We can set that aside over there. And then we can flip up our carpet here. We got a couple of wires that we kind of had routed. This is that one that we pushed up through that we were telling you guys about. It actually pushes through right here. And then there's the airline tube that we pushed up through right there. So here's where our hose comes up through the grommet. We then just routed it towards the firewall, towards the front, just kind of bringing it up there because we're going to be mounting our gauge on the dash through an opening here that we found. So just kind of routed up that way. We do only have the hose that we routed through here so far. You do need a send and return hose, so we're actually going to be routing this hose back out. You're going to have two of those going back out in the end. Here's our gauge cluster here. This is what we've got to hook up our components to on the inside. There was a panel that was located right here. It's just a kind of a dummy panel. So we took the panel here, and I just took my screwdriver in there, and I just popped this panel out of there. Those are the four clips that held it in. Since there's nothing behind there, I was kind of checking to see, hey, is there anything behind here? Is this a compartment or anything? There's nothing there. So this is a great spot for us to mount our gauge cluster. So I kind of held it up there, and what I did notice is that it didn't quite fit, but it was very, very close. So in order to be able to make it fit, the piece across the top here, I did trim out just a little bit. There are two attachments for there. I cut those out where those used to go. And it was just a piece that went across. So I just took my razor knife and I went up and I went across and then I went down. You can kind of see a little bit there where I'd cut it out. And then I did have to take my file and just ever so slightly notch this side and notch the other side. And in doing so, that made it just big enough for us to be able to mount our gauge cluster right here in this location. So we're going to be able to put it right there, and that's going to integrate into our dash really nicely. And what we can do for the opening here that we've got on bottom still, we can actually trim this piece out to be able to snap back into place to cover up what we've got down there. All right, now we're going to start hooking up our cluster here to our gauges. So this is that air line that we had run up. We're going to plug that in. There's two ports on the back of your gauge cluster here. You have a port here, and you'll have a port here. This port here goes directly to our gauge, and that's the air line that we're going to route back to our air bags. We'll plug an air line in here, route it from here back to our bags. This port here, we're going to route from our cluster here to an airline and go to our air compressor that we've got right down there. So the air compressor is a shorter run, so we're going to go ahead and hook up the compressor first, and we're going to run that down to the compressor and plug it in, and then we're going to have another hose that we're going to push through the grommet and run from this one to the bags. So we've already got our airline pushed through here, so I'm going to hook this one to the compressor first. So we're going to put it on this side over here, and we're just going to push this right on here. Now this can be pretty difficult to push on, so one thing that can make it easier is a couple options. You could heat this up a little bit. If you get some nice really warm water, you can drop that down into the warm water to heat it up. You could use a heat gun. Be really careful with a heat gun though, because it can deform the line pretty easily. So you need to just be real careful if you're going to go that route. Another option you have is you can take a screwdriver and you can kind of spread out the end a little bit to make it easier. And then I'm going to use a little bit of silicone spray to make it slide on easier as well. All right, so if you look at the end here, I did mushroom it out just a little bit with the screwdriver just to help get it started. And I sprayed some silicone lubricant on the end of the fitting there. And I'm just pushing the two pieces together from here. And that's pretty much that, plugged in right there. So now we're gonna go back down below. We're gonna find roughly the length that we need to cut our hose, plug it into the compressor, and then we're gonna bring some back up here to plug into this one. All right, now we've got the other end of our air hose here. This is just gonna poke right into here. Now I did cut off the excess, and I'll show you the tool that I used to cut those real quick, just because it is kind of a special tool and it's kind of required to get a proper seal. So here's our line here. I already cut the length off, but we can cut off just a little tiny bit here. So this is a pair of hose cutters. We've got some here at etrailer that you can purchase. We have smaller ones as well if you don't want these big, heavier duty pair. Because you really don't need it for 1/4 inch airline like this, such a big pair. But it's important that when you cut your airline, you're using a very sharp tool like this that cuts it cleanly. Because regular like side cutters for wire cutters would pinch the line and give you kind of a V-shaped notch at the end from the cut. This is going to be a very clean, smooth cut, and we're able to cut completely perpendicular with the line, making sure that it's a nice square cut like that. And that's going to be real important for it to seal properly inside of the quick connect fitting that you see here on our compressor. The quick connect fittings, this just pokes into it, but you got to have that nice, clean, square, undeformed circular shape there for it to seal and slide into here properly. Just poke that in there, and I kind of like to poke it, pull it, give it a couple of ins and outs just to make sure that it is fully seated in the quick connect. All right, so now we got that one attached. We took the hose that we had cut off, the remaining hose, we routed it back up into our grommet, and we poked the other end of this line onto that other barbed fitting that we talked about on the back of our switch box. The rest of this line then we route towards the back, towards our bags. We pretty much just go up on top of the frame, and then it just continues back on top of the frame. Just all the way back. We're basically just right on top of the frame. You can kind of see it here. Just poking it around any of the body mounts that we've got until we get to roughly about this point here. It was about right at this point that I popped it up over the fuel tank, and we're going to hop underneath so we can see that. So here we are right at the middle of the vehicle. You can see our red line coming in from the left. There's a cross tube that's right here. This is near the rear of our fuel tank. This is where we cut our line once again, and we put the T-fitting that you see there in place. We poked the red line coming, that we routed back coming from the switch inside to this T-fitting. You'll then see in the center of the T, we've got red line coming out of that. That's some of the line that came in our kit. We poked it in there, and that routes off towards the driver's side rear airbag. On the other side of our T, there's black airline coming out of that, and that black airline is the airline for the existing airbags that was installed in the vehicle. The airline to that bag happened to be long enough to reach the T here, so we just cut the line from the airbag and poked it in there. Now I do recommend that you remove all the air from your airbags before you cut any of the lines on your airbags. So if you get that thing aired up to a high pressure, when you cut that line, all that pressure is going to want to escape, and you could potentially cause harm. So just remove all the air from the system first, and then you can cut your existing line, and then it just pokes in. Now the red line coming out of the center of our T-fitting, we route above the piece here, and this looks like it's for like a gooseneck or a fifth wheel. If you've got like a kind of like a prep package type of bracket, we go above that and we come out the other side here. Here, when we come out the other side, you have a second T that comes included with your kit. We plug it into that second T that comes in our kit. One side of this T connects to the airbag, so it just routes right up over the frame and it'll go right to our airbag here. That's that black line that's pre-existing. That was already there for that bag. We did cut the line. The other part of this line here is from the manual inflation that the customer used to use to air up his bags. He would have to manually inflate those. We wanted to leave that there just in case, for whatever reason, if something happens where his compressor's not working, maybe the battery's just completely dead. I mean, you probably can't drive the truck then, but for whatever reason, he needs to air up his bags, but there's something going on where the compressor's not going to work for him. He's still got that option for manual inflation over there through the manual valve, so we poked that in this side to be able to maintain that functionality. And this just routes back to where he had his manual inflation at the back. So next we're going to plug in our air filter that comes in our kit. This is going to be the more flexible black line that comes in your kit. This is way more flexible. The red line, if you kink it, you damage it. You can't kink that line. You got to be real careful when routing it. This is way more flexible because it's not under nearly as much pressure and stuff as the other line is. So this line here, we're just going to take this end and that barb fitting that we poked on our compressor, we screwed in there. This is just going to slide right on there. And you shouldn't really have much problem sliding this thing on. You don't even need silicone. It slides on there really easily. Now from here, we're going to route this to the highest and most out of the way of the elements as possible. We're trying to avoid moisture getting sucked into our compressor. Now, unfortunately, the line that comes in our kit is not long enough to make it into the engine compartment to try and route it up somewhere higher. So we're going to be putting it on top of the frame, kind of hiding it behind this body mount here just to try to minimize how much moisture gets on it. So we're just going to zip tie it along here, poked it over the frame there, and then we're going to hop on the other side there and connect our filter to it. So now we're on the other side of the frame from where we'd routed that hose here. There's an electrical connector that's right here, kind of on top of the frame. So that's going to give us a nice point to zip tie. So use a cable tie here to attach our filter to that point to keep it up out of the way. So we're just going to cut off the excess and then poke our filter on there. So we'll cut it off about here. That way we'll give ourselves just a little bit of extra. We're using those same cutters just because it'll make it easier to poke the end onto our filter. And then here's our filter. The end just slides right inside of our hose here. And then we can zip tie it to our hose there, to our factory wiring right there to hold that kind of up out of the way from moisture. All right, so we've got all of our air lines and everything hooked up to our compressor and to the bags and stuff. We need to finish up inside here. We got a bunch of wires that we've got left to hook up here. So the white wire that we had routed in from that harness that was underneath, you got a bunch of excess here. This just needs to plug into one of the spade terminals that's coming off the back of your unit. So you see you got one here with a spade terminal, and then I got another one that I routed through the compartment here that's coming out the back. This one here. It also has a spade terminal. So we're going to use the one that I routed through the compartment. It doesn't matter which one of these that you plug it into. Just plug in those two pieces. We'll use a zip tie and we'll zip tie up our excess back and hide it up behind there. This other white wire that's got a spade terminal on it, it needs to go to ground. So again, it doesn't matter which one you plug it into. Whichever one you do plug it into, that automatically makes the other one your ground wire. So we're going to be using that for ground. We also need to hook up the light here. There's a little light that plugs into the back of our unit. And to power up our light, we'll need a power source and we need ground as well. So let's hook up ground real fast. We can share grounds between these two components. So we're going to do that. So I'm just going to bring these two pieces kind of together here. Maybe bring them back something like this. Pretty good right there. We can then cut off the excess. Strip both of these back. We can then twist both of these wires together since they both need to be ground. So now we're going to go ahead and connect this with a butt connector. Now, butt connectors don't come included with your kit. You only get 2 quick splices, which aren't really going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So make sure you get some butt connectors so that way you can have this done appropriately. We're attaching that on this side. You can get butt connectors here at eTrailer if you need some. This is a regular one because we're inside the vehicle. If you're going to make any connections outside the vehicle, I'd recommend heat shrink butt connectors because those will seal up when heat's applied to them to protect it from the elements. The other side of this butt connector, we're going to connect to a ground wire. I've already routed that ground wire. It was just some extra black wire that we've had laying around here in the shop. But what I would normally do, if I was doing this at home or a buddy of mine I was doing it for, I would take the extra white wire that we've got here that we trimmed off. I'd cut this spade terminal off of there. I'd put a ring terminal on it, which you do get ring terminals in your kit. So I'd put one of those in there, and then I'd attach to the other side to extend it. But I just used the black wire here because we had it laying around. This black wire I routed down right over to here through the opening, and then it just runs down. It's right here. And that's the ring terminal that comes in our kit. We stripped the wire back and crimped the ring terminal on. And then we did have to supply our own self-tapping screw, and we ran it right into the side paneling right here to get our ground. So we're just going to take the other end of this black wire. Again, if you're doing this at home, I would use the excess white wire that you trim off. Black is just kind of a more common color for ground in a DC automotive circuit. So now we're just going to take these 2, we strip back the one, push them together, and then we'll crimp these down to get our ground. All right, we are looking good there. We have 1 wire left that we need to connect. And this is an illumination wire for the light here. The intention of this is to hook it into your running light circuit, so that way whenever your lights come on, for your headlights, for any reason, your dash lights come on, this one will also light up, so that way you can see all your stuff at night. Now on this truck, we got lucky right here behind this compartment. This is our selector switch here for our lights. We can actually tap into a wire right there to make that easy. If for whatever reason you're working on this and you don't have, you may have switches here and stuff, this compartment, this little door that we took off, is likely filled with components or something on a higher trim package model. So if you put this somewhere else, you can't get to those. One of the options that you do have that you can do, if you can't find an illumination source, just hook this to an ignition source. That way, whenever you start your truck, this light comes on. It won't be that annoying at night or during the day if it's lit up. So that is another option you got. But we are going to be hooking it into our actual light circuit so it works with the rest of the lights there. So our light here, if we reach in the compartment and reach up, we can unplug the connector to the switch. And this did have electrical tape on it. I already kind of peeled some of that off so I can get in there so I can check these wires. And I tested the wires to figure out which one's going to have power on it when the lights come on. And I found that it was this orange wire here. So if you look here, you can see there are 2 orange wires coming out of the back of your connector. So we're going to use the one here, which is next to the black wire. It's second from the outside next to the black wire. The other orange wire is going to be second from the outside, but you can see over here it's next to a, what color is that? It's white, might have a stripe on it. No, it's just a white wire. So we're going to be using the orange wire that's next to the black wire in the connector. If you're looking at the back of it, it's this pin here next to the black one. So now we've identified the wire, I already tested it to verify that that's going to be the one we need. I'm just going to bring it down here just to make it easier for us to get to. We're going to use a quick splice to attach it. This is the quick splice that comes in your kit, and I actually do not recommend using this quick splice. The reason being is that these are great quick splices. I love these quick splices, but this is for a slightly thicker wire gauge. This is going to work fine for the wire here that's on our assembly that it comes with, but these wires here are likely quite thin inside of the sheathing here, and we may not puncture through the sheathing and actually contact the wire with this this quick connect. So we're going to move to a one that is in red in color. Red in color is for your smaller gauge wires. This one here will crimp onto here. You can get these here at eTrailer if you need them. So we're going to go ahead and connect this. The other quick splices are a little easier because they quick splice onto both wires. This is only quick splices onto a single wire, and then you have to crimp a spade terminal onto your other wire. But I kind of like that as well because it makes it easy to disconnect. So I'm going to poke it on. I'm going to put it about right here because that's where I had used my test probe to test the wiring. So that way, instead of cutting through the sheathing at another location, we're cutting through it at the same point that we have already cut through. And at this point, we just need to squeeze this together to crimp it down. So I'm just using my channel locks to come in here and squeeze the quick connect here shut. It should lock itself shut. A little tab should go in there. And if you got it on there right, you won't be able to slide this up and down the wire. It doesn't slide on it, so that's pretty good. So now we'll hook up the other end. So this is just the other black wire coming off of the back of the bulb here. It doesn't matter, again, which of these black wires. The bulb will illuminate as long as it gets power on one and ground on the other. It does come pre-stripped, but I like to strip back just a little bit more. And then we'll slide our spade terminal on. You can get these here at etrailer as well. And then we're just crimping it down. All right, that looks pretty good. We'll now poke this into the quick splice. It's got a slot here on the back for poking your connection into. All right, we got that in there. I am also going to grab just a little bit of electrical tape and wrap it around that spade terminal because there is portions of the blade that's exposed, and we don't want that to accidentally short because it could potentially cause some issues. So we're just going to grab just a little bit of electrical tape here just to kind of seal this up. All right. There we go. So we're going to plug our connector back in now. And then let's get an idea if our light's going to come on. Look at that. Turn our headlights on and our light comes on. Turn them back off and they go out. So we've got that working properly. We can now get this mounted up in there. We're just going to pull our wiring back through. We can clean it all up once we get it mounted. Put our switch roughly in the location we want it in. And we're just going to use a screw and just run it right up in there. So we're just going to use a screw and run it into the plastic here. You do get enough bolts and nuts, the same ones you would use to mount your compressor, to also mount this piece. But with this being plastic and the location, it'd just be really difficult to get those in. So we can actually just run it right in with these. You can get these at your local hardware store. And we're just going to run it in just like that. We'll do the same thing over here on the other side. Get both of those connected. There we go. We've got that mounted up. We will be trimming out this piece here. I'm going to trim that and then we'll get that reinstalled. But we're going to come back to that until that's kind of be the last step. Because that'll give me the opportunity to get all my wires hidden and everything, and then we'll do that at the very end. Let's make sure we get this working first, though. So we're going to head back to the engine compartment now so we can make our last connection to the battery, and then we can verify that the compressor is all working properly. That'll finish up kind of making sure it works. Then we can make everything pretty. So here we are under the hood. I've gone ahead and zip tied up that red wire that we had routed up here. Again, you can just kind of reach down and pull it up, and then I routed it behind the battery and then around it, and I just kind of coiled up the excess and zip tied it there. On the end of our fuse here, you've got a small piece of wire there. We can go ahead and strip that back for a ring terminal. It is kind of pre-stripped there for you, but again, I always like to strip just a little bit more than what they give you. So on the end of this, we're going to put a ring terminal. Now, the ring terminal that comes in your kit is this. You get 2 of these in the kit. We already used one for ground. This one you can use for power, but it's such a small opening, it's not going to fit over any of your stuff here. Even though it fits over the tapered end here, by the time you get the threads, it won't fit on there. So you're going to want to get a different ring terminal, and that's pretty much going to be for everybody. It's not going to fit on most of your battery connections. So we got one right here. You can get this here at etrailer if you need it. And we're just going to slide this on the end and crimp it down. Okay. We'll now grab our socket we're going to remove the positive terminal post right there. We're using a 10 millimeter. So we're just zipping the nut off of there. And I'm keeping pressure down on the electronics here, the wires. Just keep things from arcing and sparking. We'll slide our ring terminal on, and then we'll reinstall the nut. And there we go. We've got our connection made over there. That all looks nice. At this point, our system should be operational. Let's double check here, make sure our fuse is inserted. Yeah, our fuse is installed there. So we can head to our system now, and we'll hit our button to air it up. All right, so now that we've got it all hooked up, we just want to verify that it works. If we press up on the button, it should turn on our compressor and inflate our bags, and we should see it here on the pressure gauge. Our compressor kicked on, so that's good. It is going to take a minute for it to build up pressure because it has to send air all the way back to the bags, fill up the entire bag cavity, and then start to pressurize them. But we can see the pressure is now rising up. All right, that looks pretty good. And then if we go down, that should release the air. And it's releasing the air, so that looks good. So we're gonna go ahead and go back up just a little bit so we can spray all of our connection fittings with some soapy water and check to make sure we don't have any leaks. So yeah, we're just down here on the compressor. We're just spraying some soapy water at the fitting here, and we're looking for the presence of bubbles. So we don't see anything coming out. You might see a couple of bubbles that are just on there, but what we're looking for is bubbles that are continually reoccurring, because that's going to show us that air is leaking out of the system, filling up the soapy water, creating those bubbles. So since we don't see anything here, we're just going to move on down and check all the fittings, our T-fittings, and any connections that we've got here, just to make sure that there's no leaks. All right, so all that we got to do now, we've sprayed it, verified we didn't have any leaks. We then just cleaned up all of our wiring, zip tied everything up, made it nice, and then I took that piece that we had removed here where we put this, and I trimmed out kind of a U shape around the switch here, so that way it would fit and be able to snap back in there at the bottom. I did have to trim just a little bit off the top here because the screw heads for the switch and stuff was getting in the way, so I did trim maybe like maybe about a 1/4 inch off the top as well. And that completes our installation of Firestone's Air Command 1 air compressor on our 2017 Ram 1500.